welcome to Share Truth, Apply Scripture, the radio program of Engage Magazine. I'm Teddy James, joined as always by Jordan and Wesley. Guys, we've spent the last couple of weeks talking about some pretty heavy issues, heavy topics, things that, yeah.
And about that, speaking about heavy topics, I think I studied so much on each topic that I come in here thinking, I don't got a whole lot to say about that because I just feel like I don't know what to say.
Yeah.
So much.
But here's the thing: what we want to boil down to, and this especially includes this episode, is that there are discussions that need to be had, whether it's immigration, legal, illegal, what to do with those who are already here, what to do with those who are born here to illegal immigrant parents, whether it's economics, all of these things. There are issues that on the surface, and I think this has kind of been the knee jerk.
Yeah.
We have our set decision.
You have your pre-boxed answer that you just slap down and say, this is what my team has said.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah. Really good way of putting that.
You don't think about it.
Right. And our challenge is think about it.
And it has been a challenge for us to be able to discuss these in 27 minutes.
Yeah,
we're
not going to get to the bottom of anything.
No,
Right.
Absolutely not. But here's what we do, and this is our goal, just to let you know from the very onset. We want you to ask questions.
Yeah.
We want you to see that the side we disagree with, they actually have some points worth discussing. Our side may need more nuance than what we have. And I'm going to be honest with you guys. I criticize the people I agree with a lot more than the ones I don't agree with. And today is not going to be an exception to that. We are talking about guns. We're talking about self-defense. We're talking about the Second Amendment. Now, let me preface it with this. We are not reacting to anything.
Right.
We're not reacting to a shooting. We're not reacting to some company that came out and said guns are bad. We've not come out to some company that said guns are good.
Well, why? Explain to them why that is.
Well, because when you react, you rarely react rationally. Right. Because then it's emotionally charged, all of these different things. And so we want to approach this maturely, logically, and biblically. And so that's why we chose right now. We want to do this. And so we've got a few questions, but I think...
What's the top? What are we going to introduce?
We're doing, well, I already said we're doing the gun, Second Amendment. Wesley fell asleep.
Golly. Man.
But here's the thing. Before we can really discuss the issue, we talked about the team that we're on, what we listen to.
Right.
So I'm just going to come right out and say it. I was raised in a military family. Yeah. I grew up watching war movies. I grew up shooting guns. I really like guns.
Right, yeah.
They're just tools. I've always been around them. So just so the listener knows, where are you guys coming from?
Well, did not grow up in a military family, but I grew up in a family that hunted and fished and was outside regularly. And
wait, you fish with guns?
Some people do.
So some people do. You can do that. But I grew up outside. You were trying to make a joke, and I was serious, TJ. So I grew up with guns. We used them for game, for hunting and fishing, and my granddad carried one for self-defense reasons, which we'll get into that in a little bit. And so for me, having them always around, but there was always from the day one a huge understanding and appreciation for the danger of them and the misuse of them. And like the red means safety, and if it's not on safety, I mean, it was like a spanking material. You know what I mean? It was like discipline.
With me, I was never even taught about safety.
Yeah,
like about the safety. Let me rephrase it. I was taught, don't care, the gun's loaded.
Yeah.
Don't care if there's a safety. Don't care any of that. You treat this gun like it's going to misfire any second.
Right.
So it's not pointed at anybody. Okay,
so that was my atmosphere.
Yeah, go ahead, Jordan.
So for me, my family was never big on hunting, not because we're against it or anything. We just didn't do it. But we lived out in the woods. Dad had guns. I didn't. And for a long time, I don't know my parents' real reasons for doing this, but I was not really allowed to play with toy guns when I was a little kid. They softened on that as I grew up, and I was like, well, why not? And you know, and it was, I don't know, I whined so much that they let me. But there was always, like you said, Wesley, a seriousness around the subject of guns, that they're not toys, they're not something to be so in awe of that you're obsessed with them or anything. These are serious tools.
Right, exactly. That's a great word for it, though. they are weapons,
Yeah.
but they are also tools,
Right.
and they should be treated with the respect that they are due.
Yeah, exactly.
And so that's one of the things that, I mean, even now my children are young, but they know that we have a gun. They know. They don't know where I keep it or how to get to it. That's
and of
for
course
very practical reasons.
Self-implied. I know we probably need to move on, but self-implied too is a moral object. In and
Yeah.
of itself,
Yeah.
it wasn't the
Yeah,
bad
it
problem.
is a tool, and it's a tool because there is wickedness in the world.
Right.
And that's
So
why it exists.
Here's the thing: what we've discussed are the fact that, just so that you know where we're coming from, we do have guns.
Yeah.
We are used to guns. We have guns around us. We are in the South, and that's part of our culture. But there is something where even Southerners do disagree, and that is the issue of self-defense. All right. So, because before we can get to, and both of you alluded, we have people that carry guns for self-defense.
Right.
There are Christians. There are people who love God and who feel a conviction that to commit any violence, even in self-defense, is wrong and sinful. Now, some of those, most well-known are Quakers. It's just kind of a
Sure.
whole denomination that have that. In fact, they are conscientious objectors. They do
Right.
not participate in wars.
Right.
And our government says, you're right. You have freedom of conscience. That's cool.
Knock yourself out.
Yeah,
And I'm
And I'm
absolutely.
glad not everybody thinks that way.
Yeah.
I am
Let's
too.
finish with
I am
saying-
too. But I'm also
Yeah.
glad we live in a country that says
Yeah.
you have
Oh
that,
yeah,
you
yeah,
have that
yeah,
freedom.
yeah,
So,
absolutely.
where do you stand on self-defense?
Well, I mean, it's a biblical concept. That's a non-negotiable there for sure. I mean, you can, like I said, our Quakers brothers. I mean, they're free to make that decision,
Absolutely.
certainly. But in Scripture, you'll see weapons used all through Scripture
Right.
For war purposes. But then you'll also see them on a couple occasions used for self-defense purposes. And one place is in Nehemiah. They guard their with swords, and then. And all through Scripture, especially in the New Testament alike, it never condemns the use of self-defense or a weapon for
Right.
self-defense. But in fact, the few times there was one where you've got it written in our notes, but in Luke, Jesus said himself, "Hey, go buy a sword."
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
there's,
we're going to get into
Yeah.
that
Yeah,
too.
we'll get into that.
so I think so. There is
So
a
let me
biblical
play.
concept.
All right. So I want to play devil's advocate, and Jordan, because I didn't get you to answer the question,
That's
I'm going to
fine.
throw it to you. How do we respond to Jesus telling Peter, "Put away the sword. Those who live by, or those who draw the sword will die by the
Oh
sword."
man, that's one to wrestle over. But I think
It absolutely is. That's the point.
Yeah, I think
We need to wrestle over that.
what the root of that was Peter's heart, the attitude that he had towards the sword. And I like what you said when he and I know we're going to get into it, so I won't say anything. So when we get to it, I'll say that. But Peter's attitude when he so readily unsheathed the sword, he was ready to fight. He wanted to fight. He wanted to
And
strike.
that's Peter's character too.
That was his character, and Christ was rebuking him because that was the wrong attitude.
Yeah.
He said, "Put away your sword. You're living by the sword." And living by the sword doesn't mean using the sword.
Right.
Living
that's
by the
good.
sword
That's
is an
good.
attitude. It is you're looking for a fight. You want to fight. You like your weapon, and it's this attitude that you have some mentality of fighting.
Well, and like that's certainly a huge part. But the second half, like that's the first half. The second half of that also, we know there's something that we can all agree on. I hope,
Yeah.
is that God's kingdom and the gospel is not advanced
Exactly.
through the sword.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
absolutely.
These are things that the reason I know we've talked about gray areas and stuff, but there are some non-negotiable things here, and the other topics we talked about, and that's one of them is the fact
Right.
that to in advancing God's kingdom, that's self-defense and forcing and coercing people.
Right, yeah.
Is different. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's not how it
Well,
happens.
okay. So
Right.
here's the question: do you think, because now we're going to go to a little bit more, I guess, controversial. Do you believe that the average citizen should have access to weapons? Now, we've talked about we believe in self-defense, and
Yeah.
there are countries out there who say, "Hey, we believe in self-defense too, but we don't like guns."
Well,
So
great. That's a great attitude to have. Guns aren't likable.
they're not toys,
Right, they're not toys.
and they should be handled with care. Even policy should be handled with care. So the question comes down: do we think that the average person should be able to purchase a firearm, whether that's shotgun, rifle, handgun?
Yes.
Nuclear weapon.
No.
Nuclear weapon. Hang on a second.
A nuclear weapon is not a firearm. A firearm is a firearm, not a nuclear weapon. No, I believe, no different than the founding fathers did when it comes to self-defense and the reasons why they put the right to bear arms in there. And, a firearm, the reason I say follow him, because I think about this for a moment. A 60-year-old widow woman who's at her house and is broken into by a 20-year-old athletic man who either wants to rape her, destroy her, hurt her, whatever the case, that is offset when, and the playing fields are leveled when she brings out a 9mm.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just the bottom line. You level the playing field of self-defense when you have a firearm involved.
Okay, let me say this, because I know that this is one of the questions that I have been posed. Is it better if someone has come into your home wanting to do harm to you and you have the option, you can take that person's life and they're lost and they go to hell, or you can allow them to take your life and you spend eternity with Christ? One,
I have
is
an
that
answer,
a
but
fair?
I'm still on the mic. You go,
Yeah.
Is that
Jordan.
okay? Go ahead. Is that a fair dichotomy?
I think that you can't apply one rule to every situation.
Except for when the Bible has answered it.
Right,
Well,
except for
because-
that, and I don't think the Bible has answered that specific situation. I mean, you'll find principles that you can apply, certainly, but not a clear-cut answer. I think it depends. For me personally, if there's a gospel issue at stake, if someone's coming at me to harm me because I'm a Christian, then me personally, this is just my conviction. I don't know about you guys, but I feel like to fight back is to misrepresent Christ. For me personally, if my
And the
family
martyrs
is at
had
stake,
that. The martyrs
Yeah.
had that as well, and
Yeah.
we'll get into that. We don't have time this segment, but that's something that we need to spend some
Right.
time on. But go ahead.
yeah, if my family's at stake, I believe it's my duty to protect my family, and I'm going to do that.
Yeah.
And that's such an important thing. At least for me, and again, and I cannot separate who I am from how I was raised.
Right.
I was raised in the military. I was raised, with this belief that it is your responsibility to protect those who need to be protected. And my wife and my children, they need me to protect them.
Right.
Right.
And I take that
Yeah.
duty, that responsibility, that charge, I take that very, very seriously.
Yeah. Well, and also it's our responsibility to, how much would you have to hate the image of God to not protect the image of God?
And that's really what we're going to get into as well. Guys,
Yeah, I'm looking at the
we're
clock.
getting
My word.
Yeah, we're moving forward more than we really want to. And you know what? The reason for that is because there's a lot to be said when it comes to guns in general. There's a lot to be said when it comes to the Second Amendment. And there's a lot to be said about the worldview behind those issues. And one thing that I hope you notice is that while we're having a discussion on gun, ultimately it is a discussion of worldview. It is a discussion on the responsibility and the roles that we take and the places where God has put us. And we're going to continue this discussion next when we continue talking about guns. You're not going to want to miss it.